You're entering Corsi Nation.
This is Jerome Corsi, and today it is Tuesday. It's November 4th, 2025. This is Election Day across America, and we'll cover that in a second. First, I want to comment on the passing of Vice President Dick Cheney. He was president during George W. Bush's 2 terms. Controversial figure. He was always more of a hawk on international affairs and wars. And, in those years, we had 9/11. We had a lot of fundamental change going on in America, where we were surrendering power to government for safety, which is constantly a mistake. And Cheney was at the forefront of the Patriot Act. He was at the forefront of the reaction to 9/11, going into Afghanistan and ultimately into Iraq. Cheney, I think of as more of a warmonger, the warmonger of the George W. Bush era. And his daughter is not particularly effective in terms of being a MAGA supporter. That's hardly the case. And so the Cheney family has been very controversial for a long time in politics. And at the same time, we honor his passing and his service as vice president. Okay, let's move on to what's going on today. I'm finding a number of things are happening. I'd like to kind of start out with the statement by Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller, who's, of course, one of the top consultants to President Trump and also a speechwriter for President Trump. He had a role in drafting his 2 inaugural addresses. And Stephen is outspoken. I've known Stephen for a long time. And let's hear what he has to say, because he's really got an analysis of the Democratic Party I think is important to pay attention to. And Chris, I'll interrupt and we'll make some comments as we go along, but go ahead and start.
Party has become dangerously, violently radicalized. And you're right, Sean. I get death threats every day. My wife gets death threats every day. We've obviously had to deal with pretty extensive doxing campaigns. But the truth is, Sean, that people across the country, across the government, across law enforcement, who are fighting for safety, security, prosperity, are dealing with radical left communist threats and attacks all day long. And President Trump, of course, came within centimeters of being assassinated.
1 millimeter.
During the middle of his rally on live television by a wicked, evil assassin, and then only weeks later, a second assassin, if not for a Secret Service agent spotting the barrel of that gun, would have taken President Trump's life.
Okay, let's stop there for a second. Stephen Miller was making a very important point about the violence of the Democratic Party and how insanely anti-Trump they've gone. Now, he's going to expand that into the evil dimensions of what the party supports. So let's hear where he goes from his initial statement and indictment that the Democratic Party has gone dangerously violent in a communist leftist way. Let's see where he goes from there. Let's follow the argument.
Himself. We are dealing with a party that is so extreme that considers its opponents to be its mortal enemies, that dehumanizes its opposition, that justifies violent attacks against federal law enforcement, assaults against ICE and Border Patrol, that sides over and over again with criminal aliens, MS-13 gangbangers. Look at how they venerated and worshipped and praised the MS-13 child smuggler that they dubbed the Maryland dad, somebody who beat his wife and smuggled children and was a member of a terrorist organization, and they held him up as their hero. This is a dangerous
Okay, we can stop right there. That's, again, he's making the points about how radical the party is and how the causes that they support, the Democrats, are just abhorrent to the average American. And he concludes, let's listen to a little bit of the conclusion here.
Dangerous movement. And what you're seeing in New York City with Mamdani, that is the future. A party that believes in no bail, a party that believes in no jail, a party that believes in no borders. But here's one group they do want to put in jail, their political enemies.
Okay, that was a very good statement. And I think he's summing up why the Democratic Party has lost its way.
There are 2 types of people who should avoid taking gabapentin for
now. And so the Democratic Party has lost its way in a major way. And I think it's not going to recover very quickly, if at all. I don't think the Democratic Party has any more reason to exist, quite frankly. If it wants to support abortion on demand, even after a child is born, if the mother doesn't want it, it can still kill the baby. That's infanticide. It's barbaric. And this Democratic Party doesn't care. They'll support any evil intention coming down the pike. Boys playing in girls' sports and in girls' locker rooms. Gender dystopia and mutilation of children before they've reached the age of puberty. Mutilation of their sexual organs. I mean, these things are hard to imagine that any sane people would advocate the kinds of arguments we're getting out of the Democrats these days. Chris, you want to comment? Because I think the Democratic Party is about had it. In this election, I think the Democratic Party is going to have to steal some elections to win.
Oh, that's their MO anyway. The idea is their policies have been found to be so unpopular at this point in, well, let's just say more sensible areas that they're trying to find where they can concentrate votes, where they can make it believable that their maneuvering will bring in a winner. That you have the media to help manipulate what the opinion or the popular opinion looks like. And then when the results come out, what they do can look legitimate to the average person who's not paying attention. But this is an extreme situation. And we're looking at guys like Omar Fateh in Minneapolis, who is like Mamdani. Let's say he's a louder Mamdani. He's the second. He's not necessarily the front runner. The front runner is the incumbent, the extremely woke. What's his name? Gray is his last name. It was Joel Gray. He's the guy that kissed the George Floyd coffin.
Yeah, I mean, these people are.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine the Democratic Party of John Kennedy has gotten to this point, and they'd run Satan for their candidate if they had a choice to do it.
It came awfully close in 2016. But.
Yeah, really. Okay, well, look, let's go back to the coup d'état with Obama. Obama is surfacing again. Obama's out there grousing around and trying to be relevant. Obama would be well served just to stay in his hole. He's not popular. People are seeing through the discord that he sowed and understanding he weakened the country. As I said, when I wrote the book Obama Nation, I should pull a copy of that and quote some of the things I wrote then, 2008. I said it would be a weaker, more divided nation, which we are, and that Obama was not going to defend the United States, which he didn't. That Obama was the one in Putin's pocket and shoving all these hot dogs down his face. I mean, here's another picture of him with a hot dog. What's that all about? Always shoving. Biden was shoving ice cream in his mouth all the time, and that was a signaling. Little children, come here. I've got ice cream. So what's Obama about here? Hot dog, shoved in his mouth all the time. Okay, enough of Obama. I had enough of Obama in 2008. He was a negative influence on our politics. I said at the time he was raised a Muslim and a communist by his stepfather in Indonesia had him in an Indonesian Muslim school, registered as a Muslim student. And Frank Marshall Davis was his mentor, who was a communist writer in Chicago, newspaper editorialist, who moved to Hawaii. So we have here a dark history of the Democratic Party, which ends up in Biden and now Kamala Harris. I mean, how far down can this Democratic Party go before it disintegrates entirely? And with Comey yesterday, we had another set of disclosures with Comey. Comey evidently, a note was produced. Comey's trying to get his indictment thrown out, but the prosecutors are showing even more explosive evidence. So we have a handwritten note from Comey with a couple of sentences in it. HRC, Hillary Rodham Clinton plan to tie Trump. HRC equals Hillary Rodham Clinton. This again shows that Comey had advanced knowledge that the Russian collusion was a Hillary and Obama plot and it wasn't based in fact, and yet he championed it, brought cases before the FISA court to get wiretapping on Carter Page and probably George Papadopoulos as well. And Comey is now going to find out that it's not going to be so easy to escape indictment. He's indicted, escape prosecution and conviction, which I think may be more difficult if it's a jury that's Democratic. But the point is, I think Comey is in serious trouble here, and it'll be followed by others. This is not the only prosecution we're going to see. Now, Chris, if you'll put up God's Five Stones, I want to make a couple of points. Gods5stones.com. That's G-O-D, no apostrophe in the S. You spell out the word five, F-I-V-E, and stones is plural. God's Five Stones. It's like G5S. That's what God's Five Stones. And it's, of course, the David and Goliath story. And what we're saying is we're investigating now a whole series of different types of political corruption. The Obama coup d'etat, and I've written a book on that, which has done quite well. Here it is. I'm going to grab it right here. That's the book, Coup d'etat. And it shows what you're going to find out what we're going through here with all of the things with the Operation Crossfire Hurricane, in which they wanted to imprison me. Act Blue, the political corruption. And by the way, its story is out in Gateway Pundit today that George Soros, through a network of charities connected to Soros, he funneled tens of millions of dollars to the rise of Zohran Mamdani. It didn't happen organically. It took a lot of money, and it came from Soros, his network of charities. So, whenever a figure rises on the left, this is what the Gateway Pundit is writing, you can usually assume that Soros is financially involved somehow. It's funny, the left claims to hate billionaires, but they never seem to turn down money from this guy. That's true. So, Mandami's campaign, with all these millions of dollars from George Soros-linked charities, it's an elaborate scheme to violate federal tax laws, and I'm sure there were crimes committed. And again, Mandani is a communist. He's a Muslim communist, and he's made it very clear that he's going to fundamentally change New York City. There's articles showing that Dallas is now the refuge of a lot of the investment bankers in Wall Street. Dallas is a much more favorable place to do business than you find in New York City, which is increasingly hostile to any efforts to have capitalism flourish. Okay, so this network of conservative tax-exempt organizations connected to Soros involved more than 40 million in laundering through charitable donations through nonprofits, redirecting them into political activity, which again they shouldn't do. Okay, so if you there's a clip here from Linda Sarsour, who admits that CARE, which is the Council for American Islamic Relations, is funding the majority of Zohran Mamdani's New York City campaign. And CARE is being investigated for its ties to Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood. Okay, again, this radicalism, which now has overtaken Great Britain, threatens to take over New York City just like it took over London. And I believe we're going to see a massive reaction against this. Trump actually endorsed Cuomo yesterday in the mayoral race in New York. We'll determine today. The Democrats will probably steal this election. If they steal any, it will be this one and the governorship in New Jersey. These are two of the prizes the Democrats don't want to lose. And if these states continue to be blue, the states are going to continue to recede economically. New Jersey's gotten to be a ridiculously expensive place to live, and New York City's almost impossible to live in, unless, of course, you're poor and on the dole. Now, the food stamp program also is going to pay half the money this month in November, and the next month it has no money. And yet the Democrats are not willing to turn back on the government unless they get their woke programs funded. I think Trump this time has them. And I think Trump is about to win some major victories at the Supreme Court. John Roberts has suddenly seen the light of day and is not voting against Trump the way he did during the Obama years. I want to have Chris come on in a minute. I want to comment on a couple of stories internationally. There's not much going on in terms of international news today, but I'm watching very carefully what's going on in Ukraine. And the Ukraine is at the moment kind of in a wait and see aspect. That Ukraine continues to send drones deeply inside Russia, but Russia is also sending drones into Kiev, and the Europeans are completely at a loss to know what to do, because Trump is increasingly saying he's not going to support Zelensky, which I'm recommending is the best way to end this war, is just quit supporting Zelensky and the war ends. Okay, and Ukraine, I think the fundamental reality of Ukraine is Russia's won this war. And it's not going to, Ukraine's not going to get back the territory Russia occupies unless we have a nuclear war. And that's pointless. So we're seeing, I think, the final recognition that Putin's going to have to gain territory. Ukraine's going to lose territory. And we're not going to fight this war to a victory for Ukraine without consequences that we can't afford, which is nuclear holocaust. And these are just realities that have to be taken into account, whether the Europeans like it or not. Whether Zelensky wants to keep his corruption going doesn't matter, but fundamentally, the geopolitical reality is that Russia has won. Chris, you want to comment on that? I'd like to make sure we get this point very clearly driven home.
It looks like, again, no matter what the media says, no matter what Trump said a couple of weeks ago that Ukraine has a chance, we have to find a way to end this war. And it looks like nobody's going to be happy with the outcome. The Americans aren't going to be overly happy because we spent all sorts of money for no reason, or virtually no reason, or just to get into this fight. We have the Russians are going to be upset they can't take everything. Zelensky's going to be upset because he has to return home saying, "Oh, great, we lost this one." And I believe the left in the U.S. is going to try to frame Donald Trump as Neville Chamberlain in this whole thing, in an attempt to score some points for the 2026 election. So we have to look at all these angles before we see what's going on. But yes, either way, the war has to end because it's gotten too expensive, costs too many lives, and the wrong people want to keep this war propped up.
Okay, one more thing on God's Five Stones, and that is I'm going to watch very carefully the election fraud that could occur today.
Yes,
because this is a precursor to 2026. And Donald Trump has got to get this executive order that's being drafted out and into the public so that we have a declaration under Article 2 as Commander-in-Chief powers that only U.S. citizens can vote in the elections in 2026 midterm elections and thereafter. We can't have these illegal immigrants voting and the Democrats supporting the illegal immigrants to vote against the Republican candidates and to also cheat. The Democrats can only win by cheating, lying, stealing, killing, destroying, burning. If that's the Democratic Party, we don't need it. But we're raising additional money on God's Five Stones. Any contributions you can give at this point would be really helpful to get us across the finish line so we can continue to support and endorse President Trump's efforts to get this voter integrity executive order in place. And we're recommending that President Trump should do it as an emergency order under his powers in Article 2, Commander-in-Chief, saying that foreign nations like China have penetrated our election computers, and therefore this is a matter of national security, that we need to have the following rules. Proof of citizenship, voter ID, eliminate the general mail-in balloting available to everybody, go back to very limited absentee ballot requests, which are tightly controlled, and to get the machines out of the voting. I think these are the kinds of things President Trump has in mind, and I think it's what's coming down the pike. Certainly I've been briefed on that. And I'm continuing to say that this Todd Blanche in the Department of Justice is a barrier and should be removed. Pam Bondi should get back to Washington and run the department, or else she shouldn't be Attorney General. She doesn't need a Deputy Attorney General doing her job. Okay, I think I want to conclude on the economics today because, again, I'm constantly imploring you to take seriously the fact that gold and silver are surging and are going to continue to surge. Gold's rate still at $4,004 an ounce, down just a little bit from yesterday, and silver's $47.90 an ounce. If you go to CorsiNation.com, we redesigned it a bit, so you can see in the top tabs there, you can find gold. You click that, you'll see Swiss America, and you can get the Walking Liberty $50 offer for brand new customers. You get 250 of these coins. And if you did this, back when I was talking about it earlier, you would have substantially increased your money, the purchasing power of your of the silver coins would have been much greater, where their value in dollars have dropped in its purchasing power significantly. Gold, I was talking about this when gold was at $1,800 an ounce. Okay, so silver is still more affordable because it costs less, under $50 an ounce right now. And so it'll double at a faster rate. It'll go to 100, silver will, faster than gold will go to $8,000 an ounce. A lot of good papers and books on this website. Please call Swiss America, get a copy of the book I've written with Dean Heskin, head of Swiss America, which is how the coming global crash will create an historic gold rush. Toll-free number is 1-800-519-6268. Write it down, 1-800-519-6268. In terms of other stories today and looking at the news, I'm finding that the major effort today is on the elections. We've got, if you take a look at the Federalist is reporting a lot of culture stories. The leftist groups are perpetuating the homeless crisis for their own benefit. How much money can be made trying to help the homeless. As long as they stay homeless, you can continue getting your money as a nonprofit organization. Also, the queer agenda is being covered, and all the transgenders. That seems to be a continuing theme, but I think one that the American people are turning out and not listening to nearly as intensively as they had before. We've heard it all, and it's all completely nonsense. All over, Michael Snyder's writing that all over America, chaos is erupting in the streets. Again, we see that. If we're going to go through another round of violence, rioting in Washington, D.C., and L.A., and different places, well, what's going to be necessary now, I think, is for Donald Trump to increase supplying the troops to make sure that we have the secure cities that we need. And I believe these troops will be available to conduct the 2026 elections, especially if, again, today we see cheating to win certain Democratic prizes that they cannot win by legitimate voting. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi today. It's Tuesday, November 4th. Remember to go out and vote today. And in the end, God always wins. God's going to win here too. And what I'd like to implore you is, in the spirit of 2 Chronicles 7:14, join me in getting down on our knees and asking God to forgive us for letting all this chaos get to this point. If we do this, God will hear our prayer and heal our land. And we need this land healed. Dr. Jerome Corsi, CorsiNation.com. We'll be back every weekday. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for joining us today. God bless.